Okay, this is part 2 of video that I'm taking at Shark's Cove. And yeah, I really do. This place, out of all places in Oahu, I mean, again, let me stress that I don't recommend Oahu at all. I wouldn't recommend it to my worst enemy. But if you're going to come here, if you insist on coming here, well, that's your problem. A word to the wise is sufficient, as they say. You'll find out when you get here. And you might not like what you find out. Anyway, so there you go. You get a good look at the tide pools here. And you can see there's a good many people in there, but it's not just mega crowded or anything. And the water is very shallow, crystal clear. As you can see, there's a bunch of families and little kids, so it's about as safe as any place could be, and certainly very good for novice snorkelers, or even if you just want to walk around and check out what's under your feet. You can see this water so clear, you could kind of see a lot of things even without snorkeling. And of course, it's far too shallow to dive right here, but if you want to dive beyond these rocks, see that nice wall of rocks there? Yes, you can do that. But hold on. Be very careful on these coral rocks. That's one thing when you come here. Walking on the rocks is very, very precarious. And if you fall, you can see how sharp that coral is? Look at that. Fall on that, see what happens. See how you're feeling after that. Yeah, so you got to be very careful. And wear some kind of shoes. I've got these water shoes on, and even for this, they're somewhat inadequate. When I was doing the night snorkel last night, the guy actually had water boots for us, and they had a nice thick heel on them, and they could really tackle these rocks pretty well. You see, there's a little beach there. And the parking lot is, you always kind of a challenge to find parking, but if it's not like a real busy weekend, especially like a holiday weekend or something, you'll find parking eventually. There's even basketball courts up there. There's a couple little like restaurants across the street, although I wouldn't recommend them either because they're a big rip-off. One Mexican place, it's like you'll get a quesadilla for $22, and it's like three whatever slices of quesadilla. And no good. I wouldn't recommend it. But there's a food land, grocery store just right up there. Can't see it from here, but it's there. You can pretty much get anything you want there. Have your lunch here, whatever you want to do, have dinner. This place is open till 10 o'clock at night. They don't kick people out of here until 10 at night, and you can park. The parking's free. So the only kind of a downside, like everywhere else in Oahu, and this is one of the big problems with it, there's a lot of property crime here. 6 times the national average. 6 times the national average. Lots of break-ins, car break-ins, I mean. So you don't really want to leave valuables of any kind, at least certainly not visible, in your car. However, I have to say, this beach is very crowded. There's always people walking around. So, I would say most of the time in the daytime, you'll be okay here. But after sunset, well, maybe not. So that's the only thing. Whatever you have that you don't want to lose, don't want to see stolen, then you better get it out of your car. Or at the very least, you better stash it somewhere where none of these crackhead pieces of shit around here can see it. And that's exactly what they are. You know what? I have no sympathy for that scum. They're just scum. Nobody helps them. Nobody does anything for them. They're hopeless. They just you know, they should just all drop dead. Really, that would be the best thing that could happen for them, for everybody else. They're just shit. They're garbage. You know, they're just, you know, basically human trash, human refuse, and they're toxic human refuse. And if that's callous and cruel, and where's my compassion? Well, you know what? I think it's reality. There's really no hope for a lot of these people. You know, there's no hope for them. They're never going to get off the drugs or the booze. They're never going to get the mental health care that they need. Blah, blah, blah. Nobody's helping them. No one is helping them. It's just getting worse everywhere, not just here, but in South Florida too, and everywhere. California, San Francisco, everywhere. It's just getting worse. And nobody's doing a goddamn thing about it. And just like everything else in this country that's totally fucked, or in the world, climate change, the war on drugs, you know, rampant poverty, the third world, the horrors of the third world, and nobody's doing anything about it, and nobody is ever going to do anything about it. That's all there is to it. And if you think otherwise, then okay, you can join the Optimist Club or something. I don't know. Go pal around with Pollyanna or something, because it's just not going to happen. So, well, whatever. But yeah, this is about for any kind of beach or shore diving, snorkeling, or anything like that. Even just hanging out at a beach to do whatever. You know, in the winter, there's a lot of surfing that goes along here. This is on the North Shore, by the way, so there's major surfing that goes on in the winter. But you know, as you can see, the waves really aren't they're not really surf worthy in this time of year. But what else did I want to say? Yeah, you know, even the tide pools, if you just want to stick in the tide pools, they're filled with all kind of marine life. I mean, there's everything. There's octopus in here. There's moray eels, although I haven't seen either one of those things. They're here. I know damn well they're here. It's just you're not necessarily going to see them every time you snorkel here or whatever. You know, those creatures, you're talking about creatures that live in crevices and caves and nooks and crannies and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, you know, you don't see them as often as you'll see, you know, other things, of course. You know, common fish and so forth and so on. But if you're lucky, you might see one. As a matter of fact, on the night snorkel last night, the guide, which that was a very cool trip, I have to say, but I was disappointed, not with him or the trip itself, but I'm going to tell you why now, because we were somewhere over there at night, like I said, probably about 9 o'clock, maybe a little later actually, I think, at that time, somewhere around over in here, and he saw a big moray eel, you know, in a crevice. And by the time I got over there, the thing had retreated back into its lair, and it was just tucked in way back there. So we were both down there with our lights, underwater, you know, like flashlights. He gave everybody in the group one of them, and he had one. And now we're looking back in there, and that eel was tucked up pretty far back in there because I couldn't see him, and that was unfortunate, because, you know, during this entire trip that I've been on so far between Australia and Fiji and here, I was really hoping, you know, it would have been, you know, just the icing on the cake to see a moray eel, or well, ideally, and an octopus, or some kind of cephalopod, meaning an octopus, a squid, squids plural, squid plural, because they're often in schools. Cuttlefish, which by the way are only found, well, we don't have them on either coast of the Americas, put it that way, either in the Pacific or the Atlantic coast of the Americas. There are no cuttlefish. So you do have them pretty much everywhere else. They're even in the Mediterranean. As a matter of fact, they are, you know, they're eaten. The Spanish eat them, and Italians and Greeks, I guess, and whoever else, and I think it's kind of, cuttlefish is kind of considered, I don't know about a delicacy, but they obviously like it very much. They use some of their ink. I think they actually make some kind of pasta. Well, that might be out of squid ink, but it might be out of cuttlefish ink too. I'm not sure, but they do make some kind of ink. And here's another fun fact: cuttlefish are, of course, they're a type of mollusk. You know, they're a type of, like, you know, they're related to snails and clams and everything else, just like octopus, squid, you know. But you know, they have no, like, outer shell, or, you know, they really have nothing in terms of, like, any kind of bone structure, skeletons, an outer shell of any kind. But what they do have, and I guess I'm pretty sure it's just it's sort of a vestigial part of them that's really no longer of any use, but that's how they evolved, and it's just still there. I think that's the way it works with cuttlefish. They're called cuttle bones, and they're just like a little, really like a little thin shell inside the animal, you know, inside them internally, and they're actually used. People give them to their birds, to their parrots, cockatiels, because parrots like to chew on these things, and they're safe for them to chew on. They're called cuttle bones. So if you ever hear anybody talking about cuttle bones, they're not really a bone, but that's exactly what that is. They give them, they're, you know, popular with, you know, people who have pet parrots and cockatiels and other type of birds like that. Well, cockatiel technically is a parrot, but whatever. They're popular with, you know, people who have, you know, parrots, basically. And the parrots like to chew on them, and so forth and so on. So yes, that's what a cuttle bone is. They come from cuttlefish, which of course is not a fish. It is a cephalopod. Don't ask me to explain that or spell it. Look it up if you're that interested, and I know you're not. So that's about it. I'm going to cut it here because I want to go start the tedious process of putting sunblock on, which I despise. But unfortunately it's a necessary evil, at least today, because I don't want to wear my wetsuit because I'm flying tomorrow, and the wetsuit won't be dry by the time I fly tomorrow. And, you know, putting a wetsuit, a damp wetsuit, even in a suitcase, and it's in there for hours, not so hot. It might wind up pretty stinky, and it might stink everything else up in this suitcase, so my luggage. So I'm not going to wear a wetsuit today. What I'm going to do is, I have the shirt that I'm wearing, as you can see. This is a 100% nylon, quick dry and solar protective shirt. However, it's old. It's quite old. And with these shirts, the solar protection, it supposedly wears off out of it. It washes out after like 30 or 40 washes. And this thing's probably been washed 100, God, who knows how many times. So it's not really, it used to have, you know, a rating, an SPF rating of, like, I think 30, maybe 35. So it gave you a pretty considerable amount of UV protection from UV rays. But I would say now it may only be giving me, you know, what your average shirt does, even a t-shirt, which is about, you know, 8 SPF, which is basically nothing. Well, it's something, but not much. It may be a little bit more than that, just because it's a nylon, it's a different material, and so forth and so on. But I doubt it. I doubt it's much more. You know, could be, I don't know, whatever, 15% at most, or 15 SPF, excuse me. But I'm still gonna slather on the sunblock. Even I'm gonna put it on my back, which is a difficult thing to do when you're by yourself. But whatever, put it on my back, put it on the back of my legs, or all over my legs, really. Face, back of my neck, arms. Just make sure I'm pretty well covered in sunblock, because the sunblock I have is 50 SPF. And it should be okay with all that. And, well, that's pretty much about it. I'm gonna cut this now, and I probably won't get back on here, I don't think. You never know though, until I get to the island of Kauai. And boy, I'll tell you, I can't wait to get there. My flight leaves from the airport in Honolulu tomorrow at 5 o'clock. It only takes about 40 minutes to get to Kauai. Then I got to pick up the rental car, get there about 5:40, get the luggage, yada yada yada, pick up the rental car about 7 o'clock, and then drive to the resort, which is kind of on the other side of the island, sort of kind of on the other side of Kauai, the southwestern side. And I got to drive there and just check in. And after that, should be good to go. And hopefully the Kauai trip, my 7 days there, will bear better fruit than this time I've spent in Oahu did. All right, that's it. I'm going to stop yakking and start snorkeling, or getting ready to snorkel. All right, later everyone.